I'm not really sure why, but it feels to me like the Miami Dolphins, as they're constructed now, with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback and Mike McDaniel at head coach, it feels like that's kind of been the construction of this team for a long time. When really Tua's only been there for 5 years, and Mike McDaniel has only been there for 3. It feels like it's been like 7 or 8 years for each of them there, but I'm not really sure why. I think for Tua, one factor that could be contributing to it is the fact that we've had 3 seasons of his cut short due to injury, and he's only played 1 full season where there was really no, I guess the right word is controversy surrounding his return to the field from multiple concussion injuries. And so it just kind of feels like there's always been a story around Tua. And for that reason, to me, it just feels like he's been there forever. Bringing up injuries for Tua Tagovailoa, 2024 was another season in which his year was cut short due to injury. Since 2021, Tua has played in 54 of a possible 68 games. While that's not a huge amount of games to be missed, it's about 3 or 4 games each year. From your quarterback, 3 or 4 games a year is a major number. In those 54 games that he has played in, 53 of them he has actually started. He has a 32-21 record in those starts, a little under 14,000 passing yards, 89 touchdowns to 39 interceptions, a 68.7 completion percentage, and a 55.7 QBR. I think a good way to kind of encapsulate 2024 for the offense, 2023 was the first year and so far the only year of Tua Tagovailoa's career where he played all 17 games. And when you look at 2023 and the production that we got from their 4 main offensive players, you look at Devon Achane, you look at Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. Between Achane and Mostert, you had 2 guys who had around 300 carries. They had 1,800 yards, 26 touchdowns. Achane ran for about 8 yards an attempt. I think Mostert was somewhere a little over 5. And they both were very good options out of the backfield, providing 52 receptions for about 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. Comparatively to 2024, the production from those 2 guys, I mean, Mostert was injured a lot last year, but Achane, you saw his volume almost double in his rushing attempts, and he only went up about 100 yards in production. He had less touchdowns. His yards per carry were down 3 yards. He did essentially triple his volume of receptions, and he got about 600 yards and 6 touchdowns through the air. But I think that was more of the fact that, we went through the year and Jalen Waddle had his struggles. Tyreek Hill had some struggles. And Achane kind of had to bear the load of some backup quarterbacks being in there and needing to use their check down running back more often than not. And as far as Tyreek Hill is concerned, this was easily the worst year he's had playing a full season since he entered the league. I know it's not really a major statistic to kind of base someone's career off of, but this was the first year in Tyreek Hill's career he didn't make a Pro Bowl. He wasn't a first or second team All-Pro. I know the first few years where he was first team All-Pro, that was for punt and kick returning, but still, this was kind of where this team was offensively and from a viewpoint from the NFL. Less than 1,000 yards for Tyreek Hill after he had a year where he had about 1,800, about half the touchdowns, 38 less receptions. The same exact thing can be said for Waddle. He goes from 72 receptions in 23 to 58 in 2024. His yardage is down. His touchdowns were cut in half. And this is all kind of, I think, due to the fact, 2023 was a really good year where Miami went 11-6. Tua played all 17 games. They had their 4 guys have great production. But in 2024, when Tua goes down for 6 games, we see this production drastically regress. And I just don't know how much we can continue to rely on Tua at this point. I know he's a really good player when he's in there, and obviously he can get these guys the ball, and we can have a really productive offense when he's there. But that's kind of the question: is it's not a when, it's not a if he gets injured. It's kind of a when Tua goes down for a few games. How are we going to be able to respond? And last year was a definite we're not very good without Tua. I don't really have much to say about the defense. I mean, I feel like they've kind of played above their head when it comes to being a good squad. But you also look at it as like nobody that really showed a massively impressive season. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, I think, had an average year last year. Zach Sealer had 10 sacks for this team, and Chop Robinson in his rookie year, I think he was 5th or 6th in Defensive Rookie of the Year voting. He had 6 sacks to his name. And so it's like you have some good contributions, but I don't see anybody on this team and go, wow, he is the sole reason that the Miami Dolphins had even the slightest chance to make the playoffs last year. I really don't see that from anybody. So, I mean, a good year from their defense, but I think considering who they lost in free agency from their defense, I'm not really going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Now, getting to free agency, starting with the additions that Miami has made, they did address somewhat their offensive line. They do get James Daniels on a 3-year deal coming over from Pittsburgh. They get a backup quarterback in Zach Wilson, a solid second or third receiver in Nick Westbrook-Akine, who is coming off a career year himself. And then they addressed some needs in their depth with the secondary between Efetu Melifonwu, Artie Burns, and Ashton Davis. Honestly, though, not really a whole lot. You know, I think James Daniels was kind of the big move, and they also wanted to get a backup quarterback. This is a few years in the making with the backup quarterback thing where we've had to rely on Skylar Thompson, and last year we had to rely on Tyler Huntley. And neither of those guys, I mean, we love Tyler Huntley for his mobility, but neither Skylar Thompson or Tyler Huntley are very good quarterbacks. Zach Wilson isn't either, but I think the hope is that with a year under Sean Payton where he can kind of learn some things and sit back in Denver, maybe you bring him over to Miami and see if he has had a big improvement from where he was in New York. The Miami Dolphins also re-signed Tyrell Dodson, Liam Eichenberg, and Benito Jones, among some other players. Tyrell Dodson played 8 games last year and led this team in interceptions at linebacker. So I can kind of see why they re-signed him to a smaller deal. You hope he can have similar production over the scale of a full season. Liam Eichenberg is probably going to be one of the starting guards on this team, and Benito Jones, he's going to be a solid run stopper as well. Now, the losses for this team, we do kind of have a lot. Javon Holland signs a 3-year deal with the New York Giants. Calais Campbell goes back to his original team with the Arizona Cardinals on a 1-year deal. Robert Jones signs away for a 1-year deal for about $4 million. And Raheem Mostert, who I think there was some hope that maybe, just maybe, he got back to like 60 to 70% of where he was in 2023, but he signs with the Las Vegas Raiders. Him and Alexander Mattison basically switch places. Look, I think the main thing here is Javon Holland. Like, a lot of these guys that Miami lost are either like second or third string players, or they're vets who are, you don't really need anymore. Javon Holland isn't either of those guys. He was a star at safety through multiple points in his career with the Miami Dolphins. He was very young, and he's a guy who could have a defense, I think, built around him. Between his athleticism, between his knowledge, between his ability to just play football, Javon Holland leaving this organization for the New York Giants, I think it was kind of a stain on their free agency period. I don't know how much they tried. I don't know how much they didn't try. I think money kind of got in their own way, considering how much they are owing Tua, owing Tyreek Hill, They're going to have to pay Jalen Waddle, possibly. Going to have to pay Devon Achane, possibly. They have Jalen Ramsey making a lot of... I think it just kind of became a conversation about we don't have enough money to give out to one of the young stars in the NFL. And that's always a terrible position to be in. Moving to the draft for the Miami Dolphins. Now, I did actually just post a video a week or so ago talking about the AFC East team draft grades. And I actually didn't really love Miami's draft. They did get Kenneth Grant from Michigan, who was probably one of the best defensive line prospects available. And they get Jonah Savanaia from Arizona, who in his own right was one of the best tackle/guard prospects in the draft this year. But, I mean, after the second round, they don't have a single pick until number 143. And even then, they don't really pick anybody that projects as a good backup even. I think they got good value with Ollie Gordon in the 6th round. I thought the lowest we'd see Ollie Gordon fall was 3 or 4 in terms of rounds. And Quinn Ewers in the 7th round, I kind of thought the same thing. I thought the lowest we'd see him fall was the 4th or 5th round. But that was kind of the trend for quarterbacks this year, as they were sliding a lot this year. So, I mean, I think decent value between Gordon and Ewers in the late rounds. But if Grant and Savanaia aren't A-plus players in 2025, this draft is going to be kind of subpar, to say the least. Now, to project their win-loss through either a floor or a ceiling this year, looking at their schedule, I don't think they have the toughest schedule in the world. I think they have their moments where they're playing, they have their tough divisional games, right? Where they play against New England at home and then at Buffalo on Thursday Night Football. I think regardless whether you're talking about the floor or the ceiling for this team, that week 3 is a loss. I think you can chalk that up now. If Miami wins that game, then we're talking about them as a possible playoff contender. But, that's a tough game to win, coming off 2 really tough games at Indianapolis and against New England. Then after that, I mean, you kind of have a bit of a cakewalk for the next 5 weeks. You play the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. You go to Carolina. You play the Chargers, which will be the tough game. And then you are at Cleveland and at Atlanta. 2 teams who, I mean, Cleveland, I don't know. Who knows who the quarterback's going to be? Atlanta, yes, we think Michael Penix is the quarterback, but we still don't know for sure. And then it's 3 toughies again. It's Thursday Night Football against Baltimore, at home against Buffalo, and then you go to Madrid to play the Washington Commanders before you go on bye. Then the 6 games at the end of the year, that's kind of where it's going to be make or break for Miami. They could be 6-5 or 5-6 by the time they go on bye. But then you have the New Orleans Saints at the New York Jets, at Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football, against Cincinnati on Sunday Night Football, and then you finish off with Tampa Bay and at New England. Like I said, if they're 5-6 or 6-5, they could easily win 4 of these 6 games and make the playoffs, or they could win only 2 or 3 and be on the other side looking in like they were last year. I think the floor of this team is 7-10. I think the offense, honestly, between Achane, between Tua, between Tyreek Hill, between Jalen Waddle, we saw Jonnu Smith come on last year. We got a solid rookie year out of Malik Washington when you consider the fact that it was his rookie season. He was, I think, a 5th or 6th round draft pick, and he's playing behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle without the starting quarterback for a majority of the year. I think he got a solid year in, and we'll see what happens with Alexander Madison. I think the floor of this team is 7-10, just about where they were last year at 8-9. Ceiling-wise, though, this is an 11-6 win team again, where they're making the playoffs. They're making a push to possibly win the AFC East and probably come just a few games from where Buffalo is. But this is a playoff caliber team. This is still a team with Mike McDaniel. If he has his full core of players healthy, I think a lot of flack gets thrown to Mike McDaniel because, things kind of go wrong. But I mean, how are you really going to fault a guy who, in 2 of his 3 seasons, he's finished the year without his quarterback, and he's gone through a big portion of a season without his quarterback? I mean, Mike McDaniel has seen Tua Tagovailoa get carted off the field, I think, multiple times since he's been in Miami as the head coach. And so I'm just like, why are we going to sit here and blame Mike McDaniel? And not even just for Tua. I mean, we saw at the end of the year in 2022 where Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips went down. Those were like 2 guys who were becoming stars as pass rushers before they went down. I think both with lower leg injuries. I know Phillips had an Achilles, and Chubb either had an ACL or an Achilles himself. So either way, getting back to this year, like I said, 7-10 is probably the floor for this team. 11-6 for a ceiling. And this is going to be a fun team. I think they're still going to be fun. We're kind of waiting to see if possibly they trade Jalen Ramsey. I don't think it happens due to the fact that, Miami's not going to get a lot back, and whoever they trade him to, they're probably going to have to take on some of the salary. So to me, it feels like a better opportunity to just play him for your team and pay him the money. And see if he has a really good year, and if the Dolphins bounce back, if he has a Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber year like we've kind of been accustomed to seeing from him.